From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex podcast episode of the day. Cool. All right. You ready to roll?
I am.
Let me fix my hair and put my makeup on. If you would have told me I was going to be a 53-year-old podcast host like 10 years ago, I would have been like, what? What are you, crazy? My grown sons, they always give me a bunch of hell. They're like, Dad, can you please do this differently and do that differently and do this?
Oh my gosh.
And I always say, do you want to come be the host? You come on over here if you want to do it.
Yeah, but it's good to have that. It's good to have that
It is.
from somebody that is a truth teller to you.
It is. It is. Frannie Matthews on the Riderflex podcast. Hi, Frannie. How you doing?
I'm great. Great to be here.
Where are you in Denver today?
I am in Denver. Well, just on the outskirts of Denver, but yes, in town, in home. I'm actually set up and we're empty nesters now. So I just kind of rearrange furniture to do podcasts and such.
Right. Because we all live on Zoom now, don't we?
That's exactly right.
I always tell people we used Zoom before it was cool because Riderflex has been remote for years. But yeah, now everybody's on Zoom. You got to have your background right. And I like how you got your cameras level and it's clean. There's not any distractions in the background. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Well, I'm kind of I don't want to see your neck. Okay.
Right.
So, yeah. And I'm a little bit older than you are, so I definitely
Barely
show my neck.
Yeah, don't you love it when people they got the laptop and the like this, and you're looking up their nose, and I'm like, come on, you got it. Yeah. Come on.
It's not, there's just some simple things. And I was doing green screens for a while, and I found that I felt like I had a peacock behind me or something. So I got sick of that. So I'll get back to it. They're kind of fun, but.
Well, they are, but I do like the natural look too. I go back and forth, but when I'm in my basement, I have to use the green screen because I can't show you all the other crap that's down here in my basement office.
I got some of that going on too.
So for the listeners, why don't you give us the personal overview before we get into business and your career? Tell us about Frannie, the person, where she's from, where she grew up, some family stuff. Go for it.
Okay. All right. Well, I grew up in Orlando, Florida. I'm one of the few people that was born in Orlando, Florida. And I was the youngest of 4 children. And my parents moved to Orlando because they thought it was going to be a nice small town to raise their family. So that didn't quite work out very well. I was raised during the height of the space program in Central Florida. So that was really impactful to me. We had a lot of teachers in our high school that were engineers that decided they wanted to be teaching rather than working. And we had a principal that was just an amazing recruiter for that type of individual. So I felt really fortunate to have that technical kind of, environment. And then Disney came in and that changed the environment quite a bit and also the government defunded a lot of the NASA programs. So it was a bit of a change there. I think I had shared with you before that my dad had kind of wanderlust and he liked taking road trips.
Awesome.
And so when he built his practice with 2 other guys, he was an orthopedic surgeon that went through to college and medical school on the GI Bill after World War II.
Okay.
And so when they put their practice together, they put certain things together. And they said one of the things they all wanted to do, besides pro bono work, they wanted to take a month off a year with their families.
Nice.
Yeah, yes. Isn't it?
Well,
so,
wonderful.
it started out that we just, get in the car and we drive about 450 miles to a Holiday Inn and we get in the pool and we play and have dinner and get them up in the morning and drive to another Holiday Inn and get in the pool. And I never figured out why we didn't stay at the first Holiday Inn. So that's how I got to Colorado. We did that a few years and then my dad bought a 25-foot trailer, hooked it up to a Lincoln Continental with the doors that, opened the opposite way and went across the United States. So I always loved Colorado, and I wanted to go to school here. My parents were very pragmatic and said, well, that's real expensive. Why don't you go to school in Florida and you can move to Colorado later? And that's what I did.
Yeah, you went to Florida University, right? You went to
I
Florida.
did. I did in Gainesville. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. And did you know what you? By the way, before we go there, what was your mom? What'd your mom do? Tell us a little bit about your mom. So your dad fought in World War II, and then he was an orthopedic surgeon. How about
Yeah.
your mom?
My mom early on was a retoucher, so really an artist, a photographic retoucher and
Oh,
a
oh,
photographer, and that's actually how they met. They went to school together in Wheeling, West Virginia, so everybody knew everybody, but they had a love of photography, and that's kind of what brought them together.
is
And
that where your dad was from? Were they from West Virginia originally, like high school?
West Virginia.
Is that right? How
Yeah.
about that? Was your dad and were they? I mean, if your dad fought in World War II, was he? You know, those guys, they're pretty tough, right? There wasn't. I mean, most of them, from what I know, and my dad was a little younger than that, but still kind of cut from that same cloth. My dad was born in '37.
Yeah.
Most of those guys, like they weren't like super warm and fuzzy and touchy and hugs and I love yous and all that. There wasn't a bunch of that. You know, those guys kind of hardcore. Most of them. How was your guy? How was your dad?
Oh, my parents actually were very very
Affectionate.
yeah, but there was a big element of buck up in that household.
I bet, right?
Yeah, and that goes with the orthopedic surgeon, kind of personality. They get good results when people get out of bed and move. And so there was very, yeah, I would say I'm very fortunate that it was such a nurturing environment, but it was also an environment where we had high expectations. They
Were
had
there siblings?
Yeah, there four of us, and I was the youngest. And I kid my older siblings that they got a little bit tired, so that's why I'm so much more well adjusted.
Okay, did the other ones go to school, or did they all go to college?
Yeah, my brother is an orthopedic surgeon, and we had a terrible tragedy when I was a teenager. My oldest sister drowned up in Estes Park. She also was on a trip with a friend, and not during the flood, on her way up to Bear Lake, and had fallen in the river.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. When was that?
Oh goodness, it was in '73.
Wow. Oh man, that's terrible. Okay, so there were four siblings, three still alive, three still here.
Yes, and then my other sister lives in New Jersey, and she's the VP in the hospital system there.
Wow, your parents must be super proud. All you guys are super successful then.
Well, I think I think they would be most proud about being happy.
I think I just heard a little bit of West Virginia accent in there somewhere.
Oh, there might be.
I think just a little bit, maybe.
There might be some in there. West Virginia, where they lived in Wheeling, it was at the tip. So could be Pennsylvania, could be Ohio, it could be West Virginia.
Do you still got family back in there, in that
I
area?
have a cousin that still lives there and have gone back and done some genealogy work. It's interesting,
But have you ever done that? Have you ever like sent in your DNA to one of those? I don't know. I'm drawing a blank here. Yeah, that stuff. Have you ever done that?
Yeah, I have. I'm Irish and English and a little bit of German.
My wife had me send in Ancestry. We did the Ancestry deal, and to make a long story short, it opened up some things that I don't think other people wanted to know about certain grandparents and other stuff.
Well, yeah, we have had some of that, not in my lineage, but yeah.
I always tell people, I'm like, listen, unless you want to find out that your grandpa might not have been the most faithful guy you thought he was, you might not want to go there. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think the greatest one is my daughter did her dog, and her dog weighs about 65 pounds, looks kind of like Scooby-Doo. And it came back, and it was mostly German Shepherd, and it was 12% Chihuahua.
Interesting. Fascinating. Wow. Yeah, that is pretty interesting stuff. Okay, so you decided to go to Florida to, the U of F, I guess is what they call it, right?
Yeah.
Um, did you know what you wanted to be? Were you like, I don't, like right away, were you super dialed in, or did, talk to us about how you decided what to major in and what your career aspirations were at that time?
I had no clue. I thought I wanted to be an accountant, which was a terrible decision for me.
Okay.
And I got into my first accounting class and thought I was going to be 45 minutes early for the final, and I was 15 minutes late, or something like that, and completely frazzled. And after that, I went into my professor, and he was kind of like this stone face, and you know, and I thought, I don't even want to work with you.
uh,
But if I look back on it, if I'd done a map of what I was good at, in seventh grade, I had a concession stand out of my backpack. I was selling, I would walk by the mini mart and get bubble gum and candy, and then sell it at when I was
so
in
good.
middle school. So I should
Gotcha.
have known that that was kind of my, where I was going. And I was always good at math, so applying the two of those things, I guess I got into tech sales as a result of just what I wound up being good at.
Well, so in your major, did you major in business and get a minor in marketing, or what? How'd you do that?
I had a major. I majored in marketing, and they didn't have an official minor,
Okay.
but I took all my electives in statistics.
Okay. And early on, I guess you probably knew that you had somewhat of a outgoing sales type personality, right? I mean, you probably knew, I'm just guessing you were, you go to a gathering and they're like, there's Frannie. She'll talk to everybody. Come over here. I mean, did you?
Yeah, I would. It's interesting because if I get tested on it, I'm actually not an extrovert. I'm kind of in the middle because I get
Really?
my energy from being alone and reading and researching and all that kind of stuff. But I love
Interesting.
people, so I guess I'm a natural from that point of view. But I'm not really. I don't consider myself a natural at anything. I'm kind of a
Okay.
B plus student or a B student that can get to A if I work really hard.
Did you go to Golden Gate to get your master's like right after, or was there a gap?
That was a gap. And that's a consistent career story because
Okay.
I wound up, I was working for NCR at the time, and this job came open calling on Pacific Bell, which doesn't exist anymore. But I wanted the job, and I talked him into giving it to me. And it was, I did a pretty good sales pitch because there was some pretty good stiff competition on it. Got it. And then I got in there talking to customers, and I did not know what they were talking about, particularly on the network side. It was like, I was wearing big shoes and a big red nose every day. And one of my customers was very helpful, and he said, why don't you take this one class? And it'll give you an overview. And
I
so
see.
I did that, and that was the beginning. That was the introductory class to the master's program.
Oh, okay. Okay. But NCR was your first job out of high school?
No, out of college.
Out of college? I mean, um, NCR, like you mean the old registers like we used to use in the retail
Yeah,
store?
but they were, they're making, computers. In fact, they were one of the first to make Unix, distributed computers.
I see. I see. I see. I see. Okay. I recognize NCR just because I was an old retail manager right out of college. And so I remember those registers.
Yeah, yeah, that was part. But I,
Uh,
I was hired to, when I went to work for NCR, I was hired to sell mainframes to new accounts.
okay.
And I
All right.
never bothered in the interview process to ask, had anybody bought a new mainframe from NCR in the last 3 years?
What was the answer? No?
It was zero.
Oh, shoot.
So I went out and, I had this public safety, count base, and I was traveling 5-state region, pitching this public safety offering. And lo and behold, I sold one.
Well, how about that? Your boss was like, holy shit, she actually sold one. I can't
Oh my,
believe it.
I mean, confetti fell. And I'm like, what's the big deal? I did what you told me to do. So I had a really clear
Cool.
understanding of beginner's mind.
Cool. Very good. Okay. So immediately you start having success in, I guess, tech or telecommunications in sales, and you start moving your way up, start having some success. Gotcha. Okay. So walk us through then. Go ahead and give us a little bit of the next couple of career steps as you kind of walked through, and just give us that. I know you were with the IBM for a long time. Just walk us through a little bit of career into IBM, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. I actually came to IBM from an acquisition. I was working for Sequent at the time, and they acquired us.
Okay.
And I thought, oh goodness, I'm not going to stay here. This is a huge company. And I had a very smart vice president of the division that met everybody that came from that acquisition. And when I met him, we had a really good conversation. And all of a sudden, I had truth serum, and I'm like, I got to tell you, I'm going to go. I'm leaving. I'm interviewing.
Yeah.
And he started belly laughing. He said, well, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. You're in the lobby of IBM. You can't make that decision.
You don't even know us yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
Very
at least
good.
go out for a dance. So basically the message was stay a year. And then if you don't think it's right for you, then go. But so, yeah, 18 years later. And the reason
Wow.
that I stayed was there was always an opportunity that was interesting.
Good.
The industry itself was moving quickly, and IBM had a tremendous amount of innovation, and you could move around. And then in the mid 90s, I went into a leadership position. And I was managing the team. People know AS400s, the old AS400s, but
Yep.
it had been rebranded since then. But it was basically AS400.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a little reticent to take the job because it sounded like old technology. And then I found out 98% of all enterprises had one somewhere.
Yep.
And so I loved that. I loved that market. It was incredibly interesting to see, the regional businesses across America. Because being in Denver, if there was a reorg, I might be facing west and flying to, the West Coast, or I might be facing east and flying to Kansas and, the breadbasket.
Yep.
So,
yeah. Now you've been in sales for a long time. Not trying to give your age away or anything like that, but you've been in sales for a long time. You've seen so many things change with, I'm going to guess the number of women executives on teams, the number of women you see in the hotel lobby when you're traveling. Like when you first started traveling for sales, I mean, hell, even today when I travel, I still see mostly men in the hotel lobby or at the hotel bar, at the hotel restaurant, Um, but when you first started traveling, I mean, you had to be like, okay, I'm not the only girl in here. Was that how, I mean, you've seen a lot of changes.
there were
I'm just
actually more women. There were actually more women when I started.
really, so it got
I'm
worse.
seeing a resurgence.
Okay.
But we had a definite dip, and tech has a problem with a cliff with women mid-career.
Interesting.
And it's a real drag
That,
because what I found was I had flexibility in what jobs I took, whether I was going to travel or not. I was a single mom for a number of years. My father wound up with Alzheimer's, and we moved him out to Colorado. And so I was kind of in that sandwich generation, and I kind of, I took more local presence, so I wasn't traveling.
I was going to say, how'd you do that with you? So you're a single mom, plus your dad was living with you.
He wasn't living. No, he wasn't living like this. He was in assisted living.
Okay.
I think I knew my limitations, and I knew I probably wasn't going to be able to provide him what he needed.
That's interesting that you mentioned that. So when you first started traveling, there was more women in sales and tech and telecommunications, and then it got worse. Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
I would say because, large companies were really paying attention to it. And
Gotcha.
so it wavered a bit on, bringing in new female sellers, and also keeping them in the business. So I had a reunion of some friends that I started with in my, when I just got into tech at NCR, and very few of us were still in tech when we,
Really?
Yeah.
Got you. Okay. Very good. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I did not know that. Okay. So Now you're remarried now, aren't you? You said
I
you were a
am.
single mom, but you're married now. Okay. All right. All right. And
Yeah, he's a very courageous man. He was he spent his career in construction, so he hung out with men all the time, and somehow he wound up marrying me. I have two daughters, and I had two female dogs. So go figure. That's a
wow.
yeah.
Let me hold on. Let me repeat that. A construction dude marries, yeah, two
Oh my
daughters.
gosh.
It's so good.
Yeah.
How'd you meet? How'd you meet him?
I was set up. It was a networking thing, and I had redone my kitchen, and the wife of the contractor said, why don't you go to this networking thing? And it was lots of different people there, and I went once and said, I really don't have time. And she's like, no, you have to come again. And the next time I was there, I happened to sit next to him, and she came over and said, you don't get it. I was trying to set you guys up. You need to go out on a date. I'll be back in 30 minutes. Tell me where you're going.
Are
Yeah.
you still friends? Are you still friends with her, the wife of the
You know what?
contractor?
She moved. So yeah, I
Oh,
think she moved to Las Vegas, and no, we haven't stayed friends, but she did a good deed for us.
were your daughters teenagers at the time?
Little, little.
Woo. How old? How
Youngest
old?
was 4.5 years old. Yeah.
The reason I asked that question is because my wife and I were both step parents at one time because Kim is my second wife, and I just, step parenting is not an easy job. And so
He is he's great at it. So
awesome. And you're
my
empty and you're empty nester now.
we are empty nesters. Yep.
Isn't it
Yep.
isn't it awesome to like spend money on yourself?
In fact, I'm in my oldest daughter's old room, and we completely redid it immediately. Not
Yeah.
immediately. We left the chartreuse wall up for way too long, but
Gotcha.
yeah, it's and my oldest daughter lives about 4 miles from us. She and her husband do, and
Any grant?
that's awesome. She is has a passion for older adults, and so she's working for Jewish Family Services as the director of older adult services. So real proud of her on what she's doing.
Any grandkids yet?
No, we've got a nutty dog, but no grandchildren.
You're in that perfect spot. See, right there where you're an empty nester, but no grandchildren yet to kind of tie you down. Boom. You got there's this certain period right in here where you're going to have this free time. You go do whatever you want. Then grandkids happen. Boom. Then you're locked down a little bit more.
Well, I think it's by design, though. From talking to friends that do have grandchildren, they're like, they can't get enough of it. So
right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
That's how it was for my wife and I. I have a granddaughter that's 2 years old.
yeah,
And yeah. And yeah, right about the time we were really enjoying not having any, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, okay, now we're a little bit more tied into staying close. Okay, so sorry to get off on all that personal stuff, but so all right, great career at IBM. May of 2018 comes along. Were you thinking about retiring, or did you leave for a certain reason? Did Colorado Technology Association recruit you? Talk to me about the change there.
well, I think it's no, it was before that. I think that that comes with some wisdom that you don't
Yeah.
make student body lefts like on a whim. Um, and so I had been thinking about what else I might do for a couple years, and of course I kept that under my hat.
Right.
And I did a good job also. But there had been, I will be really honest, there was a reorganization about 2 years before then, and I didn't wind up where I wanted to be.
I see. Okay.
And so I thought, well, I could, work on repositioning this, or I could see what else I wanted to do. So I thought I was going to start my own consulting company.
Okay.
And I set up an LLC and was, kind of starting on a business plan. And I got word that the CEO of Colorado Technology Association has resigned, and I had been on the board, and I thought all the things that I want to do for other companies is incorporated in this job. And so I interviewed for it, and I was kind of tentative. I mean, if, looking back on it, whether it was what I wanted to do, and I had kind of a knot in my stomach on whether it was the right thing to do. And I decided, after a great discussion with Kristen Russell of Aero Electronics, who was on the board, that sometimes butterflies of excitement and knots can be misinterpreted.
Mm.
And you really need to think through how you're feeling, and is that not just, scared of stepping off into something new, or are you excited? So it turned out to be a fabulous decision.
Because you took over as president and CEO of Colorado Technology Association July of 2018. Is that right?
Yes, that's it. I
Awesome.
I I resigned in May. My sister and I hiked the Inca Trail.
Cool.
Um, and I went to Ireland for one of the best trips we ever had. I
Awesome.
cleaned out no closets during that 2-month period, and
Very good.
then hit the ground running at CTA.
That's really great that you took a couple of months off right there. So you knew the board. I mean, you knew the people, right? Because you were on the board. So that helped a little bit. Good.
Yeah, and I understood the mission of the organization, and I understood the history of the organization.
Good thing you didn't piss off all those board members with voting against them 6 months prior. No, I'm just joking. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Okay. So yeah, you knew the mission. So that's a good segue. So give us for the listeners that have no idea what Colorado Technology Association is, why don't you just give us the 3-minute elevator pitch real quick? Go for it.
Sure. So Colorado Technology Association has been around for 26 years and started to support the software industry. And one of the founders was Bob Newman, who was with JD Edwards. And
Okay.
so that was kind of, the start of it. And then, of course, JD Edwards was purchased by PeopleSoft and purchased by Oracle. And he remained an integral part of CTA. And he's been a great help to me over the 2-year period that I've been in here. But we kind of changed on what our mission was, not just software, but the tech industry in general. And when I talk about what CTA does and our mission is to ensure that in Colorado, we have a very strong tech economy.
Okay.
And the reason I feel so passionately about this is that we know that jobs require tech skills, and more of them are. And a lot of them that aren't requiring tech skills will be automated out. And so when I look at what's good for our community, it's good to have high-paying jobs and a plethora of jobs in a growth industry, and that's tech. So we work in the areas of, we bring the community together. So, kind of economic development at a local level. I work on as an ambassador for Denver tech scene outside of Colorado. We took a trip to London last year to talk about what a great tech hub Colorado is.
Okay.
Don't know when we'll be doing that again. But we also do some policy work, and not a lobbyist. We talk for what's good for the industry.
Okay.
And so that's what we do.
It's not a nonprofit, is it? Or is it?
It is a nonprofit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. And so are you
501c6, which to me that's just a financial construct. You need to run it like a business.
Right. And so you get funding from the tech companies that are based here, or from individuals, or both, I guess. I don't know how that works.
A lot of, national companies. IBM is a member, Google's a member, Amazon, so we have a strong national base, Oracle. And then we have about 50% of our membership is headquartered in Colorado. And, our revenues are primarily from membership and sponsorship of our events. We've got a big one coming up next week, Women in Tech. Okay. We normally do that in person, and about 700 women coming together, and it's professional development and a day of inspiration. So
very good. Okay, so are you do you spend time trying to make sure the right talent is in tech, or the right investors are in tech, or the right startup companies are coming to Colorado, or all three? Or is it all the above?
It's everything, except I would say we don't spend a lot of time in the startup community.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
other organizations that are doing it, and where we are really good is once they start to scale.
I got you. Okay. Very, very good. And I know for nonprofit, boy, if you're in the CEO chair for nonprofit, most of the time that means you're spending a lot of time raising funds. Since this is more well established and you got a lot of big companies that are paying regularly, how much of your job is running day to day versus going to dinner with somebody and asking them to write a bigger check? I'm just curious.
I don't, I don't do a lot of direct write a bigger check stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I feel like my job is to really create the value for the organization, and I do business development, but not in a real direct way, I would say.
That
Uh,
would, okay. Okay. I
yeah.
know I've talked to so many, or CEOs of nonprofit, and almost all of them love the mission, right? They all love the mission and what it stands for. But, if you don't have cash, it
Oh,
doesn't.
I would agree with that. I mean, we kind of look at, three concentric circles. We look at growth, and we look at value to our membership, and we look at engagement. And
Okay.
if you have all of those going up and you flip your chart horizontally, this is how it works.
Great. Okay.
And
Okay.
so, yeah, so growth has been really important, but I wouldn't say I'm daily going to sponsors and say, hey, go do this. That's not, but I would also say I'm the CFO. I know where we're going. You got to have a plan, and you got to work in the quadrant that's high value and not losing money.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. How many employees?
with eight.
8 employees. Okay. So
Eight employees.
pretty lean group then.
Yeah, we outsource, like we do events, and so we outsource the mechanics of the events.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Very good. So you're the CEO, CFO,
And,
and some biz dev.
and some biz dev. Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that you've been doing it for a couple of years, or you're like, oh man, whew, this is a little more than I wanted, or are you loving it? What's it doing for you at this stage in your life and your career?
Okay. So here's the irony, because, it took me probably a year and a half to really figure out how the sausage is made, and then, what the environment looks like. And we had great success. We grew membership by 50% in the first year.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's
Awesome.
a
Congrats.
great team, and we had a strategy. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So much of our, our stuff is bringing people together. And so we had to innovate. And we did, are you familiar with Sea Level in a Mile High?
I don't guess so. Maybe not. I'm not.
We bring about 1,100 technologists together at the stadium. And
Okay.
I call it the prom of IT.
All right.
And so we've got celebrities that are CIOs that, are there to talk to, and we have a silent auction. And so that's been our big fundraiser. Well, that was scheduled for March 28th this year.
Oh
So
man, killer. Oh,
we pivoted, and we did it in July. And we were the first big event in Denver to do something like that on a digital platform.
oh, great.
And we got rave reviews.
Awesome.
So this is a bit of a long way of getting to, no, I'm not, now I feel like I'm rocket boost, because we're seeing what's available from a digital delivery. And it's like, wait a minute, we could do that. What about the women in tech? What if we did? So I'm kind of like, what if we can amplify this when we're able to get back together? We're not going to do it the same way. We're going to use the digital technologies to bring more people together and have more of a way of getting them together in a effective and efficient way.
Now,
So
see, Yeah, that's a great tip for the listeners. Just pausing right there. It's so easy, right, in today's world to crawl up and stick your head in the sand. Oh my God, my business is suffering because of COVID, and I'm gonna just, you know, life sucks. I'm gonna get my government money, and I'm gonna just, it's over for me. It's no, no. You have to think creatively. You have to pivot. You have to make changes and take advantage of the things that are different now, just like you're doing. And so now when you can get back together, now you have even additional revenue streams, right? Of things you can do.
Right.
That's so important. So important to
Right.
look
And
at it that way.
reach, having a bigger reach. So
Yeah.
it's, well, and I'm going to go back to, my upbringing. If you're coasting, you're going downhill.
Yeah.
So,
I like that one. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, I'm going to use that. That's a good one. I'm going to look, I just stole that. I officially just stole that. Yeah. I mean, and the other way to look at that, one of the things I say to myself is, I always say, if there are no hurdles today, it probably means I'm not moving forward, because
right.
if you are moving forward, there's going to be hurdles.
Yes. That's exactly. Well, and also it's not linear. I mean, that's one of the myths of people in business. When you look at somebody that's a CEO of like a, huge conglomeration, it
Yeah,
didn't happen a linear fashion.
that's right. Yeah.
You know, there were bumps along the way.
Ab- for, wouldn't it be nice for both of us to be able to say we didn't hit any bumps in our career?
Yeah, I
That'd be
think,
hilarious.
but bumps make you scrappy, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
exactly.
all of mine. I mean, I'm sure you've got some big
Oh,
learning experiences in your career, and it all was around a bump or two or three.
I can show you all of my scars, but that's probably a different podcast. Okay, so you're having a great time. By the way, being a CEO on a regular day is hard. Being a CEO during COVID is even harder, but it sounds like you're handling it well.
Well,
Congratulations.
you do, you look at, I shortened my time frame for a while. It's like, okay, we're just, we're just going to look at this little garden right here. That little garden's all planted. We'll go plant another garden. So I've become a little bit more, I wouldn't say um, more conservative, no, because you got to get out there. You got to
Yeah,
take the risk. But when the uncertainty is so great 6 months out,
yeah.
pull it into 3 months.
Oh, good point. Another good piece of advice. Speaking of advice, so you've had a wonderful career so far. Um, if for our listeners, a lot of people listen to the Riderflex podcast for career advice. Um, if you were talking right now to, let's call Mary. Let's say Mary's 28 years old and she's out there traveling just like you were,
Yeah.
checking into the Holiday Inn Express, eating the crappy meal, and she wants
Drinking
to
bad coffee.
drinking the bad coffee, and she wants to excel into an executive role. And maybe she's even faced with like a heavy male dominated environment, and she's feeling like she's kind of up against the wall. What would you tell her today?
Wow. Well, first of all, you need a petri dish that you can excel in. So if you're in a culture where you don't think you're being respected or heard, make a
Mm,
plan.
mm,
I mean, you're just, you're swimming upstream and you don't need to. Um, the other thing is that, it's never handed to you. The opportunities are never handed to you.
right.
You have to go after them. I had an example of, another reorg that I didn't quite like where I wound up. And I put together a PowerPoint of what I wanted to be doing. And I didn't know if anybody was doing it, but I did an executive interview with my upline who didn't know me. And I had my PowerPoint and I said, this is what I think we need to do. We need to be selling the value at a more aggressive level than we are to our, not only new customers, but our existing customers. And so I had this tiger team idea, and he's like, interesting. And then 2 hours later, he called me and he said, that idea that you had, well, you know what? It looks like that's going to be it's close to being implemented at the global level, and I'd like you to run it.
Yeah, see, This is such good advice for the listeners. I can't stress enough to folks out there, in early to mid career. Like, you have got to tell people what you want to do. If you think just working hard is going to do it for you, it's not. Like, you have to scream it. You have to tell people. You have to present ideas. You have to talk to your boss or your boss's boss. You have to raise your hand and say, hey, I want to move up. Hey, I want that position. Hey, I have this idea. Like, you have to say something. That's so important. I appreciate you bringing that up. I can't stress that enough for people. So many times in my career, and I've ran a couple of smaller $40 million companies as a CEO myself. And I just can't tell you how many times somebody would come into my office and they'd say, well, gosh, why'd you give that job to Johnny? I wanted that job. And I would be like, well, you never told me you wanted to move up. You never said anything.
Right.
Like, you have to speak up.
And also have, gives a framework for what you want to do.
Yes.
Because if it's a generic, oh, I'd like to move up, you got to give somebody something to work with.
Yes.
And then that's the other thing, is really look at what you're good at, because you're gonna get into the zone if it's something you're good at and you're passionate about. If you're doing a force fit, you're just not going to be as good. It's going to be hard for you. So figure that one out. I always like the puzzle of tech. So, and I always like figuring out like emerging techs. My favorite job was like right after it dripped off a PowerPoint into a 3D version of a solution.
How about this? You've interviewed and hired a bunch of people in your day, and you're still doing it. Lots of people that listen to the Riderflex podcast, they listen for job interviewing tips. In today's world, what are some of the most common mistakes you're seeing right now from candidates when you talk to
them? Underestimating their competition.
Oof, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Right.
Just thinking that the bar is not as high as it is, because people who are getting the jobs are really, putting their shoulder into it. Coming prepared, being able to articulate your value. Resumes are boring. I like to see something on a resume that I can tease out what, gets them going, something where they were independent on something and took it to create something. That's, and often it's not on the resume. You're
right. Don't be afraid to put creative stuff on your resume, or extracurricular activities, or athletics, or hobby. Or don't be afraid to put something interesting on your resume that tells who you are as a person. It opens it up for all kinds of conversation. I really encourage people to do that. And you're right about the competition. It's interesting. I tell you who's really bad about that is some of the folks coming out of college. They're interviewing. We're recruiting for an analyst position right now, just one of the several positions we have on the board. And we're recruiting an analyst position, which is an early career position. And one of the questions I'm asking right now, I'm like, okay, well, hey, listen, I appreciate the fact that you went to San Diego State and you were a 4.0 student in, accounting. That's cool. But there's 50 other resumes just like yours. Why should we hire you?
Exactly. The other thing, and this is going to probably it may sound old school. You don't want to get out of college and have that be your first job. Get a job. I had a job from my 16th birthday. I went down to Disney and got a job at Disney. And I was so excited about it. The minimum wage jobs that I had before I had my first real job were so valuable. And I hear employers talk about, the foundational skills, communication skills, showing up on time. I mean, all the things that, are just the must-haves. You learn that in that environment.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, you're so right. If you think just because you graduated from a top school and you had good grades that's all you need, no. I mean, I just talked to a young man today. Matter of fact, he gets on the interview and He's trying to network a little bit, and he's got 52 connections on his LinkedIn profile. And I said, Johnny, what are you doing? You haven't networked at all the last 4 years of college? Like, what? He's like, oh, well, I didn't think I needed to. Yeah, you do.
Right. Well, it goes back to when I was going to make a change. I was thinking about it 2 years before I did.
Yeah. You really have to be strategic in your approach all the way through your career. So we're almost out of time. Two final questions. Somebody asked you a very similar question because I watched all of your podcasts that I could find before you got on the Riderflex show. So somebody asked you a similar question. If you could make that phone call to the young lady coming out of U of F at the age of 21, I'm guessing you were 20 or 21.
Yep.
If you could call her and just tell her anything right now, knowing what you know, what would that be?
One of them would be don't be so hard on yourself.
Oh,
yeah. That's a lot of wasted time. And but I also would, I look back on my 20s and I spent a little bit of time, kind of trying to figure stuff out. That was more of an exploratory decade, and that's one thing that I shouldn't have been so hard on myself. That was awesome. It really grounded me in a lot of ways on figuring out what I do like, what I don't like, what I, going back to that culture, what culture I like to work in, what culture I like to create. So that's,
don't be hard.
Don't be so hard on yourself.
How about
hard. I mean, I'm a hard worker.
Yeah, work hard. Just don't spend a lot of time beating yourself up. I mean, try to move on.
Waste of time. Waste of time. Guilt. I never have any guilt.
Okay, very good. How about this? Then last question I want to ask you. If you had to put your core purpose in life right now at this stage into a sentence, what would your core purpose be?
Well, ultimately I look at what's going on in the world right now, and it's a fight between love and fear. And if I, in my corner of the universe, can bring more people toward the love side, that's my core purpose.
That's good. That's good, Frannie. I was just with my stepdaughter, who I haven't seen in several years, and she's 31, and that was her message. Her message. We saw her in Missouri on a trip, and she just said, "I'm just trying to spread love and happiness and positive energy." She goes, "I'm just trying to spread positive energy." She goes, "We just need a lot more of that right now." And you're absolutely right.
We need a lot more of that right now. And I think we have the ability that, talk about the culture. This country has been amazing on, when the going gets tough, that we all pull together and get together. And I feel that way about humanity. It's not just the United States, it's humanity. And we need to be thinking along those lines.
That's good. That's good stuff, Frannie. Really appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. Thank you so much. If you think today's tip or guest interview can help someone you know, please share this with them. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to hit that little bell next to the subscribe button so you can be notified when we release a new episode. Our show features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. You can visit riderflex.com to learn more about us and get information on the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.